to the 4th episode of Meet the Author of We Choose Joy. Today, I have the privilege of talking to Alisa Gannon, and she was one of the authors with me in this amazing book. And so I would just like to open it up for her to tell us a little bit about herself, who she is outside of being an author, and then we'll get into the juicy part about why she chose to be an author in this anthology. So welcome, Alisa.
Thank you, Rachelle.
So can you tell us a little bit about who you are? You can go like a little bit in the past or stay in the present or any offerings that you might have.
Well, I went to school for pharmacy and I became a pharmacist, but I never really liked it. I made a lot of money, which kept me there, but eventually I had to leave. The stress was just too much. And then suddenly I became like, it was so weird. I suddenly became artistic and I had never been. I mean, I couldn't even draw like stick people. So I started watercolor painting and all these other fun things. Mixed medium, mixed medium, and making cards, making journals and photo albums. And right now I don't have a heck of a lot of time to make as I would like. I'm taking care of my mother. She's ill, a little bit of some dementia, so I spend most of the day taking care of her, which I would have it no other way. So, but other than that, I mean, I have a great husband. He's absolutely wonderful. He will take my mom to the emergency room or run to the grocery store to buy me gluten-free buns, it's the little things. He's wonderful. And I have 2 daughters and 2 stepdaughters. So at one point there were 6 of us all living here, my husband and 5 women. He says that's why he doesn't have any hair anymore.
That's funny. Well, I can verify how amazing her artwork is, especially her personalized journals. There's nothing else out there like that. And you can definitely, it comes from a place in her heart that is just a very special place, which when you get to know her a little bit more, it's you'll definitely be able to see. And I will personally like post all the links to all of them so you guys have a chance to see some pictures or whatever she has to offer. But let's get into the juicy part of our conversation. And that is why did you become an author in We Choose Joy? And if you feel comfortable, could you share a bit about your chapter so that the listeners know kind of a brief overview of what you wrote about and why?
This was it was time for it to come out. It was time for it to be told. It was swept so deep under the rug that I had buried it so deep that I didn't even realize that the trauma was there. My father was an alcoholic when I don't know when he started. I assume he probably was when I was little, but I didn't know it. But it was the worst when I was in middle school. And I'd have some really rough days. I'd come home and he'd be laying in the yard yelling, you know. I couldn't get into the house. He fell down the stairs, God knows how many times. One of the worst parts is as far as I know, he didn't physically abuse us at all. But my mom would sleep in my room with me and we would put a dresser in front of the door and he would bang on that door all night long. And I had to go to school the next day, but I just kept going. It's so strange. Excuse my voice. Take a drink. Figures. Now where was I? Oh yes, banging on the door. But one day, the cops came and they told us that he'd been killed in a car accident. And I was like, oh. And then I went to my room and I sat there. I think I was in 8th grade. And I'm just like, I'm not really sure how I feel about this. And I don't like the way that I feel, about this, because I think I'm a little bit relieved. And I think that's wrong. So I had that guilt and then kind of pushed it down below. And then I cannot remember the year now. My brother became an alcoholic, and he got pneumonia real bad, and he also passed away at the age of 36. And that's when I would have been 34, I believe. And that was another thing I just buried. So I was working, like I said, as a pharmacist, stressful. I'd switched from retail to hospital, and I liked it, but it was stressful. And I just had one day where I just all of a sudden put the stuff down, got my stuff, and walked out and walked right to my psychiatrist's office, because I have had depression most of my life. I should have brought that up. Yeah. Postpartum, you name it. And I just said something's wrong. Something's really wrong. So I actually had to go to Western Psych and get electroconvulsive therapy. I couldn't believe they still did that. And it wasn't fun. They ended up having to do both of my lobes, and that causes greater memory loss. So there's no way I could go back to pharmacy. My memory, especially the long term. So I eventually was able to get off that and on the medications. We found a pretty good mixture, but I had talked to a PhD psychologist, and he said, oh, he goes, all that stress made everything that you buried just come bubbling out and shooting out like a volcano. And I said, oh my God, really? He's like, yeah. I'm like, never ever occurred to me. Was not thinking about any of that stuff at all. It's funny how your body reacts to it too. Like he said, I have PTSD, and then my body started, I get fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, stomach issues, all kinds of things.
Yeah, so it really does
tough.
surface everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And me saying that I had ECT, some people might go, oh, because like you say, I've heard you talk about the stigma of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's hard to tell. It's hard to put yourself out there and have people look at you and think, she's not right in the head, is she? But the more people that speak up, the more people will speak up.
Exactly. It's a compound effect. And I know that so many of us, we are advocates for being authentic. And that's what talking about it is, and it's so easy for us to talk about physical ailments. For some reason, it's easier. I don't know why or how.
Yeah.
But then when we start talking about mental health and the interesting aspect of how we detach like this from the rest of us, mental health is all connected to the rest of our body. With our brain being the center for everything, why don't we advocate? Why don't we feel comfortable? Why, like, where was the stigma created? Like, how far back in our human history? And how through the bravery of telling our stories like you did, how you are helping others. you know, even if it's just telling themselves the story and their own truth first, and then maybe, you know, having the compound effect of telling someone else later on down the road. I think one of the things that I really admired about your chapter was the honesty of you weren't sure how you were supposed to feel. And that is such a normal response. And all the feelings and the emotions of course you were relieved. Of course you were. You were living in a very abusive family. But then having that guilt of him being gone forever. And I think that there's so many parallels with so many of us that we carry that guilt of, is it okay to be okay that you're going to be okay? And that's really hard to process. So thank you for sharing that part. Is there any other part about your chapter or anything else that you would like to share, or any other messages or
I had asked my mom, I begged her like for us to leave, but not very often, and she felt like she had nowhere to go. But things would have been different if we had left him. I think things would have been a lot better. So I urge anybody who has children, well, even if you don't, you have to get away from your abuser or the alcoholic or the drug user, or until they're clean and sober, or you decide that you don't need them in your life. Because the children, it's very bad for the children. It can really change their whole entire lives.
Mhm. Yeah, it influences the trajectory of how we make decisions, and then how we, who we marry and how we raise our kids, and then having to process all this stuff in the middle of raising kids. I know from personal experience that kind of happened to me, and I'm very grateful that I was able to separate it a lot. But then also, sometimes you can't, and just how that might influence that for, future generation. But thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate you so much for coming on here and having all of the listeners that get to click on your interview. I really appreciate it. And again, we'll provide all of the links for connecting to Alisa and all of the things that she does. Oh yes, let's look at one of the journals. I love these. Please share.
This one's a photo album. All the pages like flip and
so beautiful.
Flap, open up. Hard to show it. The small screen. And this one is a sticker on it for some reason. Which way's the top? Fairy Garden junk journal. I'm really surprised this one hasn't sold. This one's so pretty.
So beautiful.
Tags.
I love how detailed they are. You definitely think of the totality of each page and make it uniquely.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's kind of like therapy for me. I get like anxious if I'm not working on something. But the problem is I make a huge mess. Let's see if I can find.
Well, creativity doesn't stay in a clean box, huh? Oh, so beautiful.
Pop-up page. There we go.
Thank you for sharing this.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to Alisa's story and a part of her chapter. And thank you for listening to episode 4. We appreciate you and have a good one. Thank you.